the start of the 20th century, Mesopotamia has had various important conflicts that mark the start of an era of designification and terror. Various human rights rejections occurred over this relatively long time frame as the radical movements got chances to be implemented rapidly. One of the greatest examples of the chaotic atmosphere in this region is the region of the Levant, where two different entities competed for rulership desperately and attempted to expand their influences several times. Those entities are Israel and Palestine.
In 1922, the Ottoman Empire officially lost its firm control over the region of Palestine following the conclusion of World War I. After getting permission to establish their mandate in the region, Britain established their new colony of British Palestine. However, unlike various other colonies that Britain had, this one had a difference. Both the Jews and the Muslims were given influence in the government, and the government was promising to improve the life qualities of both the Jews and the Muslims in the country. According to the population census of 1922, only 11.1% of the country identified as Jewish, with the bulk of the society claiming to be Muslims. However, as time passed, the Jewish population started to see a drastic increase. By 1945, the Jewish population grew to be 10 times larger than what it was, while the Muslim population only doubled, changing the demographics irreversibly and greatly. As a result of both the cultural and demographic differences between the two groups, Arabs and Jews saw a lot of conflicts in the period between 1920 and 1930, and with the Wailing Wall riots of 1929, Arabs started to not separate the European and Arabic Jews, deciding to show the same attitude towards them. As the conflicts intensified, the international communities and the larger governmental bodies attempted to find a solution for this never-ending conflict, resulting in various important decisions.
One of those decisions was the separation of the Mandate of Palestine into two separate entities upon its independence, one being governed by the Jews and the other by the Muslims. Although Jews favored the decision and wanted to execute the partition, Arabs did not and refused most of the proposals due to various reasons. One of the important reasons behind the hard decision-making process was the fact that the Balfour Declaration increased the Jewish population drastically, and since their population became 10 times higher, Arabs refused to cooperate with the Jews in most cases due to their request for the disapproval of the Jewish migrations that occurred after the Balfour Declaration. However, since the Jewish community got mass support, the division resolution passed, dividing Israel and Palestine into two separate entities.
Right after Britain left the region, though, the Arab-Israeli War of 1948 broke out as the first major armed conflict of the modern era between both sides. Egypt and Transjordan initiated several attacks into the region, while the Jewish armies attempted to keep their influence and annex new lands themselves as well. The result was defined to be a disaster by the Arabic soldiers, though, since the war did not result in any major success and ended up with a various refugee crises in the area. By 1950, Jews finally managed to become the majority in Palestine, and by 1956, they had pretty much solidified their position in the region. However, after the election of President Gamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt, a pan-Arabic nationalist, things started to shift towards a different perspective. Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal due to its tremendous value to the region and the global trade routes to increase Egyptian influence. However, opposing the Egyptian decision, Britain and France decided to use Israel to kick Egypt out of the Suez and regain their influence over the Nile Canal. As a result of this, another conflict between the Egyptians and the Israelis broke out, with Israel being the aggressor. Israel defeated Egypt in the peninsula, taking over several major cities and eventually reaching the Suez Canal. Later than that, Israel left the region to the UN peacemakers. Although Egyptians were defeated on all of the fronts, some Arabs claimed the war to be an Egyptian victory. However, this was neither the first nor the last time they were going to be having a war. In 1967, the infamous Six-Day War started due to the Israeli response to the Syrian air attacks on Israel. Egypt, under Nasser, signed a mutual defense treaty with Jordan and dismissed the UN peacekeeping force. Together with this, they attempted to blockade Eilat. However, the war ended up being an Israeli victory, as the Israelis took over the Gaza Strip and West Bank from Palestine, the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, and the Golan Heights from Syria. 6 years later, the Egyptian forces crossed the Suez Canal, attacking into Israel while Syria sought to regain the Golan Heights. Although having initial successes, Israel managed to turn the tides, and the Arabs were again forced to sign a ceasefire treaty with Israel. In 1979, Israel and Egypt finally signed the treaty. According to the treaty, Israel was to leave the Sinai Peninsula in return for its recognition by the Egyptian government. Israel withdrew from Egypt totally 3 years later in 1982. In 1982, 6 weeks after the withdrawal from the Sinai Peninsula, Israel invaded Lebanon due to the existence of the PLO bases in the country. However, especially due to this war and the settlement policies encouraged by the right parties in Israel, Palestinians revolted under the name the First Intifada. Palestinians started most of their riots by the first year of the Intifada and modernized their rebellion and protest forces pretty quickly, as they transitioned their usage of Molotov to the usage of rifles and grenades. In 1988, the Oslo Accords were signed between the PLO and Israel, with the accords giving the Palestinians the right to own the West Bank and the Gaza Strip under their government, truly implementing the two-state solution. However, originally being in opposition to PLO, Hamas was founded in 1987 and refused the Oslo Accords. Starting to organize suicide attacks in Israel, Hamas adopted the idea of an Islamist state that had ownership of all provinces of historical Palestine. At the same time, however, Israel continued their settlement policies in the occupied lands. Palestinians protested these policies and started to increase the strength of their armed forces due to the violation of the Oslo Accords. After several scandalous events between the two sides, the Second Intifada began. The Intifada continued for 5 whole years, and it resulted in nothing other than the disruption of the peace atmosphere, extensive settling into the West Bank by the Israelis, and the Hamas election victory in the West Bank in 2006.
Considering the importance of those conflicts and reviewing them, it can be said that the region saw a ton of conflicts and wars. No solution was found to the great demographic shifts, and hundreds of people died during the battles. People were forced to live in poor conditions, no matter from which side. All of this, in the end, proves the first point. This conflict is the perfect, or I shall say a horrifying example of what is going on all over the Middle East, and the chaos everywhere of it. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching our video. If you want to support us for more content in the future, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Oh, and don't forget to visit our website where you can access the several educational content. The link will be in the description for you. As always, it was Hassel Times.